Hey guys, we'll be moving into more structured animals now, beginning with birds. Birds are bipedal, which means they have 2 feet on the ground when walking, so we'll have to make sure those 2 feet on the same ground plane. And let's take a quick look at bird anatomy and take note of things that set these animals apart. Anatomy always supports functionality, and everything about a bird is built so that they can fly and stay up in the air. Looking at the skeleton, the main thing we can notice is that axle-like sternum. All the flight muscles are going to connect to this bone. Overall, they are very inflexible bodies and everything is fused and rigid. They basically don't have a waist. There's no lumbar vertebrae, it goes directly from the thoracic to the pelvis, so they can't bend over at all. This means they have to have an extremely flexible neck, so that takes care of most of their movement, allows them to turn and look around. Their sacral vertebrae and pelvis is also fused together, and it makes this thing called a cinosacrum, and that is only present in birds. At the end of the tail, there's this thing called a pygostyle, which is very flexible, and that helps to navigate the tail when it's in flight. Also, notice that the rear toe of the bird faces this opposing direction so it can grab onto branches. When we look at the musculature, we can see that the most prominent muscle group is the pectorals. This powers the wing so it can fly. And the biceps also have this split that extends directly to the wrist. In between, there is a webbing like in a bat's wing called the patagium, and that provides more surface area so they can glide while they're in the air. And let's take a look at the wings themselves. The wing can be divided up into a couple parts. Let's begin with the basic direction. It kind of goes down, up, and out and can collapse in on itself when the bird has its wing folded in. To get more specific with the bones, we're starting with the humerus, radius and ulna, the alula, which is the thumb, the metacarpals, and the digits. Now, looking at the feathered wing, this is divided up into sections as well. From top to bottom, we have 3 layers, starting with the marginal coverts up top, and we see the alula on some birds, the primary and secondary coverts, and then just primaries and secondaries. So when we're drawing bird wings, we don't want to just lump it together into one mass. You do want to show a little separation in between these 3 sections. Most of the movement and texture can be captured on the edge of the primaries where we see the most separation. For the side view of birds, we can simplify it into the head, use a direction line for the spine. I'm also going to assign a mass to the chest, a plane for the pelvis, and direction line for the limbs. Pay close attention to the proportions and directions. It can also be helpful to include the bone structure when you're blocking in these shapes, even if you don't see certain parts of the body like the legs, and this is going to help maintain perspective, especially in a 3/4 view. So I'm going to draw some side views of a bunch of different birds here, and I'm going to use some angular lines instead of just using completely rounded shapes, especially in the body. This way I can capture the form sensitivity while maintaining simplicity. For a 3/4 view, we can use spheres or ovals to block in the main chunks, and add in planes to differentiate between the front and side views, even on rounded forms. For the feet, make sure that when the bird is standing, the legs are planted on the same plane. And most of the structure is going to be found in the transition from the neck to the chest because of the large pectoral muscles and the skeletal structure that's all up there. Taking a closer look at some heads. To capture the characterization of the bird, you want to pay attention to the size and form of the beak, placement of the eyes, and the relationship and distance between the two. This is where side views definitely can come in handy. And similar to fish, you want the eyes to sit on the form, so add in some extra lines and folds around the eyes. As descendants of dinosaurs, birds definitely have some reptilian qualities about them, especially around the face and the feet. For the beaks, make sure you're introducing an organic transition into the head. Instead of cutting it off using a straight line, try to build a regular line to naturally fuse the bony structure into the feathers. When rendering out the feathers, look for groups. You don't have to draw out every single feather. Instead of doing that, use hatching to incorporate the texture into the form. Alright, now I'm going to do some movement for this bird. Especially when I'm starting to introduce movement, I lean heavily on this stick figure like maquette. It's so easy to lose form when incorporating organic forms and textures, so I want to ensure that the proportions and perspective are solid. Casting a main shadow all throughout the body can be really helpful to group everything together instead of rendering out each section of the animal separately. You want to treat it like one continuous form. And try to find a balance between some emptier areas and areas with more noise and detail. So give your eye a place to rest. And it can also be extremely helpful to watch videos of animals in motion to capture some natural poses. And that is our chapter on birds. I want you guys to pick 1 or 2 birds that you want to study and go through those steps again. A side view, 3/4 view in a static state without any movement, and some call-outs like the head, feet, or wings, and then finally an illustration of the bird in motion. And let me know if you have any questions, and I'll see you in the next one for reptiles.